that you've ever drawn, but I haven't seen those yet. So you should be using your shape tools. So I'm going to do two things today. So first of all, I'm going to go over again the adding to and taking away from a selection. And then also I'm going to give you your next assignment. So your next assignment, for those of you that finished and got a fabulous grade, you are going to create a self-portrait. So you're going to use all of those techniques that you learned and create a self-portrait. I am, however, and you can start that now if you feel that your grade was good on the project too. But for a lot of you, I'm going to go over how to create certain things, such as flowers and clouds, etc. So I'm going to change this to inches, and I'm going to change it to 11 by 8.5. And again, if yours, for the self-portrait, you might want to switch the orientation and do it 8.5 wide by 11 tall. My background is going to be transparent, and I'm going to hit create. Okay, so for my flower friends, I'm going to start with, the simplest flower, I'm going to start with I'm just going to say a circle. So to create a perfect circle, if you hold on your shift key, you can create a perfect circle. So I'm going to hold down my shift key. And I guess the tricky thing is trying to get them in a perfect flower situation, which mine are not. However, if I fill this with a color, I can then take these two non-perfect things and free transform them. Oops. And retransform them and move them over. So we have a little bit more of a uniform. So I'm not looking for a perfect flower, but what I'm looking for is a shape that does not look like this. Because you have the tools in Photopea and really just about any program to make something that does not look like that. So that being said, even if you wanted to make it a petal looking thing, so maybe it was a little bit more like that, and maybe you kind of shaved off some of the sides here by using your Alt key and taking away from a selection, and then fill that, or even fill that with a gradient. And then copy that. So let's say this was my fabulous petal. I'm going to copy and then deselect it, and paste it. And you can see that I just pasted it 4 or 5 times. I can see all my layers over here. So if I move them, I can then distribute them around a circle. I think I did this a little messy, but you get the idea of what you can do. And then I can rotate those. So let's see, I'm on this layer. I can actually move this center point, and this is a little bit a little more advanced, but it makes it easy for you. This center point, if I drag that here to the bottom, when I rotate this, it's going to rotate around that bottom. So I can leave that. I could do the same thing for all of these. You have to make sure you're on the right layer though. So I'm on that layer, edit, free transform, drag my point down, rotate it, maybe not quite as much. And then I'll do this last guy just because I can. Where, oh, he's on here. He's not. Where is he? So I don't know where this last dude is. I think he's here, and I think I have a glitch because I can see him on this layer, but he's not, nothing is happening. All right, so we're going to forget about him. And we're going to merge all of these. I can right click on that. And click on the bottom layer while holding my shift key and merge layers. And then I can duplicate this layer and I can edit, transform, flip vertically. And then there's my flower. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it, but this drawing it with the paintbrush is not one of them. And that goes with, you know, just about anything that has a sharp edge. So we could do our clouds the same way. Oops, looks like a Mickey Mouse head. And speaking of Mickey Mouse heads, Mickey Mouse falls under this category as well, FYI. Then I can click on my default colors, make white my foreground color, edit, fill, foreground, okay. And then I could even, actually, I could even go back in and, you know, make it a cloud with a lining. And make, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. That is a very big, now frozen paintbrush size. I don't know if you guys can see this, but my paintbrush is bigger than my actual artboard. Which is a little disconcerting. All right, so Here is my paintbrush. I have gray or silver. And I actually want to change up here my flow and my opacity. And I can make a silver lining in my cloud. Disregard the really dark silver part. But so I just want you to get the idea that, you know, you don't have to draw these things. In fact, I don't want you to draw them. I want you to use the tools that you have available to you to create your shapes. So that being said, if you want to resubmit your project 2 and use your shapes to create a more crisp and I don't want to say professional looking. Well, I guess I kind of do. I mean, project, then you can do that. If you are good with it and you're working on your self-portrait, you're going to keep all of these things in mind, because the deeper we get into this, the lower the grade will be if you give me lines that are drawn by hand and they're not, you know, crisp and clean. So your self-portrait it can be just the head, but it must have a neck and shoulders. So it must look like a bust shot, which is from the neck or the chest up. And it must have a background that is worthy of your selfie. So it should have something representational in the background as well. Does anyone have any questions?
Do we have to use like the takeaway method for the portrait?
Yep, all of these things you're going to use all the time now. Oops. So does anyone have any questions about that? Any other questions, actually? We just got one. So I'm not expecting this to be, you know, the absolute photorealistic image, but I am expecting that you're using your tools, the tools that you know how to use right now, to create a clean looking image. And nothing. So there's that. So I'm gonna close this and start a new.
So we could like draw anything or something.
You can either redo the one that you passed in for project 2, or you're going to create a self-portrait.
All right.
Like you're taking a selfie, but you're going to draw it. So I'm going to name it self-portrait. And I think it's going to be bigger than 6.61 inches. So I'm going to say, so I'm going to do mine 8.5 by 11 now, because I want it to be taller than it is wide. I'm going to make my background transparent, and I'm going to click create. So I'm going to start with my head shape, and I'm going to start with that. My head is, however, not an egg shape. So I'm going to use the takeaway method and give myself a little chin. So I'm holding down my Alt key. Now, when you're trying to draw a straight line, using this method, what you can do is, using the lasso tool, I'm going to start, so about like where my jaw ends. And I'm going to hold down my Alt key and I'm going to draw around my shape. So if you don't close your shape, the program will close it for you. So it doesn't matter what this looks like. What matters is where I start and where I end. And the program will connect those 2 points. So that's a good start. And I'm going to do another one on this side, and then I'm going to clean it up a little. So I'm just going to try to make it as even as I can. That's acceptably even. I might straighten out this area too. So with that, I would probably use my rectangular marquee. And again, holding down my Alt key. So I just want to shave a little bit off, not too much at all. So I think that was too much. So I'm going to fill that. I'm going to find my skin tone, which is pasty white. Edit fill. So I'm edit filling. You can use a paint bucket if you want. So once I have that done, I'm just going to try to clean up these corners that I have in my face. So I'm going to go to my eraser. I like to use a big eraser. That could be because I'm blind. And I'm actually going to zoom in. And I really just kind of took a bite out of that corner. To move yourself around, you can either open up your navigator tool, which we've used before, and this allows you to zoom in and move around. You can also just use the space bar. If you press down the space bar on your keyboard, you can also use this hand to move around. Also, just throwing it out there, if you have a lag like I do, kind of wait for whatever it is that you're doing to happen before you move, because you might just take a really big chunk out of something if you're not careful. So I'm okay with that. So this is the epitome of everything you do should be on its own layer, because you don't want to spend, a lot of time shaving the corners off your face and then do some sort of weird hairdo and then have to try to erase all your hair and then refill your face back in. You want to start each thing on a fresh layer, and that way if you say, oh my gosh, what did I do? You can just trash that layer. You don't have to worry about anything else in your document. So I'm going to start a new layer. So I'm going to start with my eyes. So when you think about where your eyes are, a lot of times people put them way up here. And that is an alien head, because you actually have hair that's probably going to come down to like here. And so your eyes, your nose might be like the tip of your nose might be here. Your eyes would probably be about here, almost in the middle of your face. So keep that in mind when you are creating your eyes. Although, if you're putting them on their own layer, then you're good to go with moving them. So I'm going to Again, make an ellipse. And then I'm going to again use my lasso tool, and I'm going to use the takeaway method because my eyes are not that oval. So I'm going to shave off some of my eye. Relatively okay with that. So I'm gonna go to the black and white default colors, hit my double-headed arrow. So now white is my chosen color. Edit, fill, foreground. Really, it's probably easier just to use my paint bucket. So there is my white part of my eye. And now I'm going to make my eyeball, although I think I need to clean this baby. Oops. Clean this baby up a little bit. All right, I'm okay with that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another new layer. Each part of my eyeball is going to be on a new layer. And that is because, the reason why I just told you, just in case something goes horribly awry, I can definitely just trash the layer. So now when I'm making my eyeball is bigger than the actual part that you see. Otherwise, it would just fall out of my head. So I'm going to make it bigger. And what I'm going to do, if I fill the whole eyeball, then this is what will happen. Actually, let me change my color. My eye is not white. So it's actually not really purple. I always wanted purple eyes. So I'm going to fill that. But now my eyeball kind of hangs off my eye. So what I need to do is I need to crop that. And an easy way to do that is to go back to my white of my eye layer. So I click on that. I'm going to go to my magic wand and click on the white part. And then I'm going to select inverse. So now everything but this part is selected. But since that's the only thing on that layer, then it's just this part. So I want to make sure that I'm on the blue layer. And then right now what is selected is the part that's outside the eye, outside the white part. And I'm going to edit, clear. So now my eyeball fits into my eye socket. So you can get really creative with this if you'd like to add shading around the eye. You know, obviously you have a little bit of shading on the inner quarters and the outer corners of your eye. And underneath the eye, you can, go hog wild with all that if you want. This is the basic of basic self-portraits. So now I'm going to make the black part or the pupil. And again, I'm making a new layer, making sure there's nothing on it. And if I could get it to stay. So now, since black is one of my default colors, I'm just going to hit the double-headed arrow, and I'm going to go with the paint bucket and fill that. So there's that. So now, just so I don't look like a deer in headlights, I'm going to add a highlight on that. And basically, I'm just going to take my default white, and I'm going to change the opacity and the flow way down. I'm going to zoom in. Oops. And I don't want that on dissolve. Make my brush way smaller. Oh, maybe a little bigger than that. Okay, we're lagging. And I just drew a little line, but you can't see it because it's. So I just drew a little line in there. And I'm going to come back out. So I'm okay with that. I mean, that's like the basic of basic. Oh, you know what I should probably do though? So the highlight of your eye is going to be in the same place. So the right eye and the left eye are a little bit different, but the highlights are going to be in the same place because they're reflected light. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select the 3 layers that are my eye. So I'm going to click on the top uppermost layer of the eye, not including the highlight, hold my shift key and the lowermost layer of my eye. And I'm going to drag those into the new layer icon. And I now have layer 1, 2, and 3 copy. And I'm going to edit while they're still selected, edit, transform, flip horizontally. Oh, and it moved it for me. That doesn't happen in Photoshop. So it moved it to the other side. So now I have 2 eyes, which is really interesting because I have 2 eyes. So now I have 2 eyes on here. So now what I might do is put that highlight back in and then copy that again by dragging it into the new layer icon. And then I'm just going to scooch it over with my arrow keys. I'm going to click on my move tool. And I'm using my arrow key on the keyboard to move it over so that they're even, so it's not one above the other, although. So, does anyone have any questions about that? So if you're following along, you could be here. So now I'm going to start with my nose. And if you have a different way of doing these things, by all means, but you know, I'm just trying to make it easier. So when I'm thinking about my nose, I'm thinking about the curve on the bridge of the nose, which is kind of rounded away from the nose. So again, I want to make sure I'm on a new layer. And I'm really only worried about this area. Whoops, dag nabbit. So this inner part of this ellipse. So I'm going to use my magic wand to select the face color. And then I'm going to click on the color swatch, and I want to make it just a little bit darker. So here's the color that I'm using. That's my face color. And I'm going to click down just a little bit lower so it's a little bit darker. And I'm going to say, okay, so now that's the color in my paint bucket, if you will. So I'm going to go to the brush tool, and I'm going to click on the blend mode. I'm going to go to dissolve. And I think I'm going to bring the smooth up. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we're going to try it. And I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger and a soft brush. Maybe if it's bigger. So the selected area is the only area that can receive any manipulation or any color. So I'm barely gonna touch the inside of this because I just want it to have a little bit of contour. I don't want it to be filled in. So, and again, this is with Photopea and not Photoshop, so I'm gonna wing it and we're gonna see what happens. So I'm just double checking that I'm on my own layer, and no, I don't want dissolve. I'm just going to do normal. And I'm just going to run it along the edge here. Now when I get rid of my selection, I have just a little bit of value. I don't know if you guys can see that on your screen. Can you guys tell that I have like a little value change where the nose is? Somebody give me a nod or a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Okay, thank you. So, because when you're looking at someone's nose, you can't necessarily see the bridge of your nose itself. You see a different value change where that is. All right, so I'm okay with that. So I'm going to actually take that, drag that into my new layer icon, and then I'm going to edit, transform, flip horizontally, and now I have two of those, and I'm going to, oops, got a lot of things selected here, and then I'm going to move it over. So I'm in my move tool. I don't know why it's moving. So I'm going to just, why are they on the same layer? Because they're both selected. All right. Okay, that was a little glitchy. All right, so I think this goes a little high up into my forehead. I don't think the bridge of my nose goes that high. I mean, I could work that into my eyebrow, but I probably won't. I'll probably just create a new eyebrow area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that area. Really just worried about this right here. I could cut it, but then it will look really drastic. And I don't want it to look really drastic. So I'm going to click on feather up here, this drop down, and I'm going to change it to, I don't know, like 10-ish. And then I'm going to hit backspace on the keyboard. And doesn't really look like anything happened. So I'm going to select modify feather, which is just what I did up there, but didn't really do anything. I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to backspace on my keyboard. So now it cut out a lot of the top. You can see that these are no longer even, but it didn't chop it off. It just sort of cut very gently. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side, on layer 5, select, modify, feather. Hey, guess what? It's time to go.